This is Katrin with Disability Rights New York. Welcome to our podcast, Empire State of Rights Closed Captioned. We are here to bring you information on the most relevant topics regarding disability rights and advocacy. Today, we welcome DRNY staff attorney, Amanda Pearlstein. She's here to speak on Restoration of Honor Act, or ROH, its purpose, and how to apply for ROH benefits. Amanda, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here, and it's great to be able to talk about this, which is a really cool development in New York law.
So let's start by explaining how the Restoration of Honor Act originated and why was it created. This is such an important piece of information that we're talking about today, and I think letting our audience know how it started and why it was created is going to be very important as we move forward.
Yeah, so this act was passed just last year in 2019 by the New York State Legislature, and it's meant to address really two distinct categories of issues that have been going on in this country for a long time. The first is that for a long time, the military was allowed to discharge service members less than honorably if they found out that the service member was gay, lesbian, or bisexual. And this was changed in 2011 with the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which had been the prevailing policy prior to that. But people who had been discharged under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, they still had that kind of status in their discharge papers. And then the second issue is that people can be discharged less than honorably if they break rules or disobey orders or exhibit certain behaviors like drug use or alcohol abuse. And on its face, that makes sense. But what we're seeing is that for a lot of people who are getting into that kind of trouble, it's due to symptoms of conditions like post-traumatic stress disorder or traumatic brain injuries that they had suffered while they were undergoing their military service. So people were essentially being punished for behaviors that were, one, out of their control, and then two, due to an illness or an injury that was caused by their military service. And having a less than honorable discharge, it's not just about your reputation in the community. It's really concrete. It can have a huge impact on so many facets of your post-service career. Things like your eligibility for VA benefits and other programs that serve veterans. So people with less than honorable discharge statuses they're at a higher risk of suicide, homelessness, incarceration, and goes double for people who are also experiencing symptoms of PTSD or of TBI. There's a whole process in the US military courts, which I won't be able to get into in too much detail, for a former service member to petition to have their discharge statuses upgraded and to get their eligibility for all these benefits restored. And the Restoration of Honor Act, it isn't part of that process. It's New York State specific. It's for New York State benefits only, and it's run through the New York State Division of Veterans Services. So it's important to note, I think, that this Restoration of Honor Act, getting benefits through this act, doesn't change your actual discharge status. You would still have to go through your branch's military court for that, but it helps you get your New York State veterans benefits despite having an other than honorable discharge.
Amanda, I think those are great distinctions in letting our audience know that this is New York State specific. And also, I think it's giving a really great explanation of what the words restoration of honor actually means. We're talking about people who have served our country, who are veterans and have honor in that. So I really appreciate the explanation of the words themselves. And so we're talking about restoration and what the act itself is seeking to resolve. It sounds like are a couple of different things, and that because it is New York State specific, there are some other ways that veterans will need to rather fully change their status. Can you talk a little bit about the other issues that this act is seeking to resolve for our veterans?
So the New York State Restoration of Honor Act applies to 5 categories of service members. You have people who are denied an honorable discharge due to sexual orientation, gender identity, military sexual trauma, which is sexual abuse or harassment experienced while in the military by other military personnel or during service, traumatic brain injury, or post-traumatic stress disorder. And so that's with the Restoration of Honor Act. And there have been other reforms nationwide to help veterans who are discharged other than honorably get their statuses upgraded. And this goes back to what I was talking about earlier with regards to the military courts. So to elaborate on that a little bit, each branch of the military has what's known as a discharge review board, as well as a board for correction of records. And you could petition these boards to have your official discharge status on your DD-214, which is your official discharge papers, upgraded. And there have been a series of changes at the federal level that recognize the unfairness of giving someone a bad paper discharge as a result of their illness, injury, or trauma. So a series of these memos were issued. The most important one in 2017 is known as the Curta memo because it was issued by General Curta. and it instructs the military boards on what to do in these cases. And so this memo says that the boards have to give what's called liberal consideration to appeals that are based on TBI, mental health conditions, including PTSD, or being the victim or survivor of sexual assault or sexual harassment while serving. And the boards will consider 4 factors. So if you have a condition or experience that may excuse or mitigate the discharge, if the condition existed or the experience occurred during military service, if the condition or experience actually excuses or mitigates the discharge, and if the condition or experience outweighs the reason for discharge. So the boards are supposed to look at these 4 factors and then give liberal consideration to you as a petitioner when you're saying, I behaved this way, I acted this way because of my brain injury or because of my trauma. Therefore, I'm entitled to have my status upgraded and my benefits restored. There are 2 kind of adjacent things I wanted to point out here. First is that you can still file a claim for VA benefits while you're waiting for your case to be heard by a review board. This can happen simultaneously. And a lot of the time, your claim can actually be granted during the time your review board case is pending because it's a long, kind of slow process. So if you're in need of VA benefits, I would encourage you to apply for those while you're waiting for your review board hearing. And second, it's worth noting that there's also a process called Character of Discharge Review, which is kind of similar to the Restoration of Honor Act in that it can help you gain access to benefits, but doesn't change your official discharge status. And that's something that you can also apply while applying for an official discharge status upgrade.
So it sounds like a lot of things can be happening at the same time when a veteran starts this process for their restoration of honor, which is good news. I think a lot of times it seems like all of the different things that people will want to do or need to do in order to, whether it's restore benefits or seek other outside information in relation to their benefits as a veteran, that sometimes it feels like you have to go one step at a time. So this is really great to know that these things can happen together. And so let's talk about who's eligible, right? There seems to be a lot of different policies that have different standards that you have to meet in order to file for whether it's benefits or for this specific Restoration Act. Let's talk about the eligibility process and how someone might determine if they are in fact eligible.
So the good news is that this is actually fairly simple. It's only these 5 categories that are mentioned in the Act. So to apply to have your benefits restored under the Restoration of Honor Act is if you were denied an honorable discharge due to sexual orientation, gender identity, military sexual trauma, traumatic brain injury, or post-traumatic stress disorder. Those are the categories they lay out, and it's really just if you feel like your denial or if your official reason for denial was based on one of these factors, then you can and are encouraged to apply for this.
And so how can someone apply? Is there a website? Is there a form that needs to be submitted?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a whole packet that needs to be submitted that I'll kind of go through in some detail, but just so the audience knows, all of this information is available on the New York State Division of Veterans Services website. And you would actually send your application by mail or by email to the Division of Veterans Services.
That's great. And we'll list that website in the description of this podcast so people can easily access it.
Okay, excellent. But just to go over it briefly here, you would need the following materials as part of your application. First, you would need the actual benefits application, which is on the website. Second, you need your complete official military personnel file. Third is going to be a personal statement that you write and sign describing precisely why your assigned character of service was unjust and why an upgrade to a higher character of service is appropriate. And then fourth, if applicable, an award letter from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs verifying that you have a service-connected rating for your disability. And I just want to say, if you're applying because your discharge was due to a TBI or a mental health condition, as opposed to the sexual orientation or gender identity categories, you'll also need to include a few additional things related to your disability. So that's going to be evidence of your medical diagnosis from a VHA doctor or affiliated provider. VHA is the Veterans Health Administration. Evidence from a VHA doctor or affiliated provider that your disability occurred or worsened during your military service. A written explanation, again, by you, of how your TBI or your mental illness led to the less than honorable discharge. And then again, if applicable, an awards letter that you have a service-connected rating for your disability. You don't need to have that service-connected rating to apply. It's helpful as evidence of your condition.
And so with all things, I'm sure our audience is wondering, is there a deadline? Is there a certain amount of time that this is going to be available? With the Restoration of Honor Act being new this year, is it only going to last for a certain amount of time? Let's talk about deadlines and how people should be looking at this as far as timeliness of getting it done.
Right, so as you mentioned, this is a relatively new law, and the New York Division of Veterans Services just started accepting applications in June of this year, of 2020. And you can submit your application at any time. Once you apply, they'll get back to you with an initial decision within 90 days. And then from there, if you have an unfavorable decision, you have 120 days to appeal it. So all the determinations are made by the New York State Division of Veteran Services, and they'll begin issuing decisions starting November 12th, 2020. So you can apply now, you can apply in the future. It's probably better to apply early, but there is no hard deadline based on when you exited the military.
Okay, so that's good to know. The first set of determinations will be made this month. However, you can certainly send an application beyond that, is what you're saying.
Yes.
That's great. And if anyone is having difficulty with their application, or if they're not sure about some of the information or what they need or where to find the information that they need, what resources are available for our audience to learn more about the benefits or application process?
So there's a lot more information available on the veterans.ny.gov website, which you'll be linking to. But basically, that includes a detailed explanation of how to apply, the material you'll need to apply. You can also email your questions directly to them at inclusion@veterans.ny.gov. And you can email your legal questions kind of about the application of benefits under the Restoration of Honor Act to generalcounsel@veterans.ny.gov. And then DRNY will actually be coming out with a series of presentations shortly, as well as a written toolkit that's going to include information not just about the New York Restoration of Honor Act, but also in-depth information about the military review boards and about the process of applying for discharge status upgrades when you have a TBI or when you have these other conditions. So stay tuned for that.
I look forward to seeing all of the new information, and certainly we hope you'll come back to talk to us when the toolkit is available. Amanda, thank you so much for your time today. This is such an important topic, and I am happy to hear that this Restoration of Honor Act is becoming available for our veterans.
Thank you, Katrin. It's so important that the people who serve this country are able to get the help and the support and the recognition of their service once they leave the military. So I'm excited that this act was passed and that these benefits will be restored.
Empire State of Rights Closed Captioned has been brought to you by Disability Rights New York, your source for disability rights and advocacy. If you enjoyed our program, make sure to subscribe, like, and share this post. If there is a subject you would like us to discuss, please email podcast@drny.org or comment below. Tune in next Wednesday, where we'll bring you more information on disability rights in the state of New York. The closed captioned and ASL version of this podcast is available on our YouTube channel. To listen to more Empire State of Rights closed captioned, follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.